We have Francis Davis, a professor of public policy at the University of Birmingham, joining us right now. Good to have you, Francis. All right, we're going to look at the whole situation in many countries in Europe, but looking at France more specifically, the fact that these lawmakers met today to try to find consensus, and they did, knowing that this bill to raise the age of retirement is so broadly unpopular, and even some lawmakers were opposed to it only days ago, does that mean that they understand that this is indeed just fiscally necessary for France?
I think they're under big pressure. So in most European countries, the average retirement age is above 65 now, 67 in Greece, 66, 67 in the UK. It's still only 62 in France. And when they set that pension up, for every one worker receiving the pension, there were four in the workplace. Now it's down to less than one in the workplace for each person receiving it. So every year, the French government's having to borrow money to just cover the bills. So it's not sustainable in the long term. And I think in an early part of an electoral cycle, the Senate and the Assembly have just said, we need to take this one by the hand and sort it out, or we're going to be in real trouble in the 5, 10, 15 years to come.
Okay, looking at the case of what's going on in the UK, you have these workers, for example, junior doctors, who say that many of them could make more money working in a coffee shop, and that the value of their wages has actually dropped more than 25% since 2008. Teachers are just looking for a 5% pay rise. Why is that so unaffordable to the government?
Well, I think you've got a different kind of government making different kinds of judgments in the UK case. But what we've got is some structural changes. So we had a big structural change in the late 90s and the early 2000s, which was about us coming away from coal mining and manufacturing. Then that was complicated and a bit ruined by the financial crisis 2008. And now we've got another crisis, which is the pandemic on the one hand, and the amount of money that was spent, and then the cost of fuel and lots of other items going up because of the Ukrainian war. And then you could add to that as well the undeclared costs of Brexit. And so you've got all those pressures on government. And so government are saying we simply don't have the money to be able to pay these public sector staff. Now, the opposition, the Labour Party in opposition, are saying that that's a choice, and that the investing in those staff would unlock lots of new value. So it is a political choice of the current government, but it is one made in an atmosphere of constraint, where the cost of butter is up 30% in the last few months.
Yeah. So, I mean, what does this do to the party then politically as they pass their budget? And everybody knows how hard, doctors worked through the pandemic. People know that some of them lost their lives through that. People know the importance of education, and that teachers and all of these public workers need to be able to pay their bills. How does the government walk that tightrope?
Well, I think the opinion polls show that it's not making them popular at all. And so that would point to a change in government in the next couple of years, because there's an election upcoming. And that's the same as us happening down in Greece. We're not too far away in July in Greece from an election there. There's been this big railway crash, and everybody is pointing to the lack of spending to make sure that the railways were safe. And you've got youth unemployment running at nearly 50%, and the government saying that there's not enough money around. There's a fundamental crisis here in the British, the French, and the Greek state, which is that an old consensus on how the state should function has been broken, but a new one hasn't come into place yet. And I think one of the things that we might be experiencing is, the wrong kind of leaders at the wrong time. It's interesting that Britain and France are both led by investment bankers. The Prime Minister down in Greece was also from a banking background. And maybe at a time of complex change, fundamental change, you need someone that's run a big business or run the army or run something huge, as opposed to only run the numbers through the balance sheet of a bank. And so I think what we've got is an economic crisis, a crisis of government, and a crisis of young leaders without the right kind of backgrounds to be able to respond to huge social change like this.
All right, Francis Davis, good to talk to you. Thanks.
Thank you.